Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in theaters now. Go see it! Plus some MCU Spidey spoilers. Hello! My name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media podcast where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
In this episode, on the Airlock, it's a spider bag. A spider
Bag
mailbag.
'em and tag 'em.
Bag 'em and tag 'em. The bombastic bag men. We're here. We're here to answer your spider questions. Omnibus. Jason's doing a delightful deep dive discussing Spider-Man 2099. And in the Hive Mind, it's an interview with Nikesh Shukla, the writer on the new Spider-Man India comic. So if you're a fan of Pav in Across the Spider-Verse, make sure to listen to that one.
Coming up, your questions. Rosie, do you feel that? It's our spider senses tingling, and we're stepping out of the airlock to some very, very dangerous Spider-Man-themed mailbag questions straight from the nefarious laboratories of Alchemax. Question 1 from Dewan asks, what's your favorite oh shit or well damn Peter Parker Spider-Man comic moment? One of mine is when May was shot and Peter rolled into jail and humiliated the Kingpin. Oh, wow, that's good. What's yours?
Mine is probably, this is like less of Peter being a badass because that's not really how I see him, but it did make me say, oh shit, is when Peter is really broke. So he tries to join the Fantastic Four because he wants to get a paycheck. That's like one of the funniest Peter Parker moments in comics, in my opinion. And I think about it a lot.
Okay, so my original answer, this is the real answer, and it's not that cool. But it's the answer that like 12-year-old me would give. And that is black suit Peter Parker Spider-Man crawling out of the grave in Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, Kraven's Last Hunt, incredible art by Mike Zeck. Mm-hmm. Does the story hold up? I would say kind of not really. It's not my favorite Spider-Man story. But at the time, everything about it just floored me, including that like iconic cover where, you know, Kraven is like searching throughout his hunting lodge, you know, for Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's like in the ceiling rafters, like looking down at him. Like I remember looking at that on the spinner rack and being, holy shit, I gotta get that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those most influential story arcs. I think even like you said, no matter how it holds up, I think a lot of us like that was a Spider-Man story that we always remember.
Yeah, and then this is gonna be a unoriginal answer, but it's, you know, this early Steve Ditko. They've retconned this moment so many times, both in shows and in other iterations of Spider-Man comics. But it's that moment where he doesn't really know how strong he is yet, early in the days of Spider-Man, right? And all this weight of like all this like rubble and stuff has been collapsed and it's fallen down on him, right?
That's such a great
panel. You see this moment in the Spider-Man movie. You see it in other things, and water is filling up the space, and it's all and like the concrete is crushing him, and it's like pushing him down, and he doesn't know if he's going to make it, and he's thinking, oh God, I just might give up. I'm going to give up. I can't do it. And then he finds the strength somewhere inside of himself to be like, no, I'm going to escape. I'm going to push all this stuff off me. And that is just such an iconic Spider-Man moment because unlike, you know, name the superhero in the Marvel universe, Peter Parker figured it out on his own. Like, you know, the X-Men all have a school. The Avengers
Tony
all
has
go
billions of dollars.
Tony has billions of dollars. They all do regular training at the mansion. Like Daredevil got ninja training and boxing training from his dad. Peter Parker had none of that shit. He did like one amateur wrestling match and then was a superhero. Like, and you know what I mean? And also once he figured out that he had super strength, you know, and this is a testament to him as a person, like didn't really like utilize it when punching like muggers and rock, like he could easily kill someone, right? This is him really understanding how strong he is for the first time and letting loose. And it's just an iconic Spider-Man moment that has been recreated again and again and again.
Yeah, and that panel is like still just as powerful every time you see it with the pipes and the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. I just want to say, so just to add to this, in case you didn't know about this ridiculous, after Jason gave that incredibly good, sincere, coherent answer, here is more of my chaotic facts about why this works. So it happened in the first issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Peter goes to try and join this Fantastic Four because he needs a paycheck, right? And they say no. But the issue I was actually thinking of is what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four, where they say yes. And because of this, because they let him into the group, because he is broke, Sue ends up leaving Reed to go and be with the Submariner Namor and ends up like dating him and finding solace in his arms because she gets left behind in favor of Peter. So that is another oh shit moment. Peter joining the Fantastic Four because he's broke leads to Sue cheating on Reed. Just iconic stuff. I love that weird shit. And for me, Spider-Man, I'm always just here to laugh about how he's broke. But yeah, those two moments are really great, Jason. Joshua asks, lots of discourse on how people are divided on how they feel about how most of the Spider Force in Across the Spider-Verse react to the canon events and accepting that they need to happen. Would love to hear Jason and Rosie's thoughts on this. Is it acceptable or out of characters for the Spiders, or do we just chalk it up to the writers poking fun at how the comics editor's office won't seem to let Peter grow?
I think what makes that movie so good is that everybody has a point. Mm-hmm. That's why it's a great, great fucking conflict. Like, I think we all would disagree with Miguel, Spider-Man 2099's tactics, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's also fair to say that keeping to the canon in a multiversal sense has kept a lot of bad / chaotic time stream events from happening. Like he's, I think, also clearly held the universe together. And to that, to speak more to that, the Spider Force, the Spider Society, all of these spider people that are helping Miguel, they are all the heroes of their dimension. And they look at Miguel and go, this guy's right. So clearly there is something there that is worth doing. And what's so perfect about the conflict is that from, Miles's perspective, now knowing what the outcome is going to be, that's the thing that flips it, is if you knew Uncle Ben or a police captain close to Spider-Man was going to die, then much like Uncle Ben's words, then you would have the responsibility to do something about it. Any of those spider people would have done that. But looking at from the, multiversal 50,000 foot view where the hero doesn't know and the Spider Society do know, and you're just letting events take their course, I think they have a point as well. So I think that's why it's a great story, is because you can see that both sides have an authentic perspective. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I think the other thing about it is it plays into that ultimate question, or the ultimate moral, ethical question, which is like the good of the many versus the good of the few. Like, if you could save the life of your loved one, but it would kill an entire universe, what would you do? Like, and that is the position that Miguel puts people in with the binary choice he's asking them to make. I also think Joshua makes a great point here where he says the thing about the writers kind of poking fun at how comics editors won't let Peter grow. Things like Peter can't stay married, but he can't get divorced, so he has to make a deal with Mephisto. Right, they erase his whole. Yeah,
I think that Josh makes a great point. I don't necessarily know if it's poking fun at. I think it is done in a tongue-in-cheek way, but I do think, as Kent Powers said on our show, I do think that it is a acknowledgement of how canon can force writers and creatives and characters to be put through the same kind of stories again and again and again. You'll hear on our, we did a chat Nikesh about Spider-Man India, the author, talking about how the original Spider-Man India was basically them redoing the Uncle Ben origin story, but in India with this new character, Pav. And that's really interesting because, again, somebody else has to die. Somebody else has to die. So I think it's a really smart, cool way of building in a conversation with your audience, as well as a interesting conflict that we're going to have conversations about this for years, because it does play into these big moral and ethical questions about being a hero and what that really means. Nobody can say Miles is wrong, but you also can't say that the Spider Society doesn't have a point when you see what happens in Pav's universe, where this, black hole into the multiverse opens up.
Jack W. asks, which Disney MCU character do you think will next appear in Tom Holland's live-action Spider-Man movies? I think Spider-Man 4 could be more street-based, and since they teased Daredevil's run in No Way Home, it seems like the obvious choice. Any dark horses on your minds, Rosie? Any thoughts? I think Jack is absolutely right, and I think Nikesh in our conversation is absolutely right. It's going to be more of a street-level OG experience Spider-Man.
Yeah, I totally agree. My gut says, look, this isn't fully MCU, but I also think we could see Miles. That's always been my thought about Spider-Man 4. You set it up so you have Peter as a street-level hero. Spider-Man gains more of that reputation. And near the end, you meet Miles and you set it up so that rather than Peter being dead, people just don't know Peter ever existed. And then you can have that mentorship. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little Miles cameo, a live action Miles cameo. But I think you're right. I think any Daredevil characters are up for play. I think that we could see someone like Kate Bishop Hawkeye. I feel like that is a very natural space. And she didn't know Peter Parker before. So you can also establish a world where she does know him. Does the spell keep going, though? Does anytime anyone learns that he's Peter Parker, they forget? I don't know if it's like an ongoing, like Invisible Life of Addie LaRue type spell, but I think a Kate Bishop Hawkeye, someone young and fun, could be like that. Kamala and Peter, that could be really great.
That's a good one.
I would like to see it. Also, we know that they like to take things from Miles' comic and kind of transplant them onto Tom Holland, and Miles and Kamala have an ongoing friendship. So those would be the ones. I think that street level vibe with maybe a few young kids. And let's be real. I mean, Kamala's only she's not very far from New York City. So that to me really seems like the most obvious choice. What about you?
Gosh, taking the cue from you, I think it would make a lot of sense to see the Kingpin if we're doing a more street level thing.
God, I'd love to see it.
Kind of an examination of the underlying organized crime forces in New York City. I know that Born Again is probably going to delve in that into that greatly, but we haven't really seen anything like that on the big screen. It's been kind of much larger scale threats than that. Venom has been teased. So what about some sort of symbiote battle? Oh,
I think you're right. I think the symbiote suit is actually could be a big call for Thor.
Yeah. What if what if the symbiote crawls over some big muscle bound guy who already has a problem with Peter Parker, and now all of a sudden you've got a built-in antagonist. And then we've done the Green Goblin. What about the Hobgoblin?
Oh,
what about the Hob?
Look, I just want to say, I've talked about this a lot, yeah. But, there is a version of the world where a certain Ned Leeds...
That's what I'm saying.
Is the Hobgoblin.
That's what I'm saying.
I would love to see it. I've talked to Jacob Balan about that before, who plays Ned. I've said, is that something you would want to do? Imagine that friendship and torn apart. Spider-Man 3 style, the emotion. That would be extremely, extremely cool. Okay, what about this? What do you think the reality... something I loved about She-Hulk and that I loved about Hawkeye was that they reintroduced the Daredevil characters in a slightly new tone. And they did it with Kingpin, where we kind of got the superpower Kingpin. Obviously, the Punisher, famous Spider-Man villain. Do you imagine a world where we could see the MCU Netflix Punisher join the MCU again, but in Spider-Man?
I think we could see it. but of course, it for one, the character has been, through no fault of anyone's, politicized by the fact that, the all cops matter, whatever you want to call the thin blue line movement, has co-opted the Punisher skull as like one of their pieces of iconography. And so that makes it is something that I feel like this iteration of Disney, or really any iteration of Disney, would be like, we don't need it. It's not like he's a major, well, I mean, the people that like the Punisher, it's like, it's religion. Like, it's like licorice, like not a lot of people like the Punisher, but those who like it, like really, really like it. And so I think that there's a way to do it. You make him more of like a special forces guy, and then maybe not so much like a vigilante who's just like guns people down. And they've done that in the comics a little bit, where, I'm thinking of like, House of X did that, and Civil War did that, where it's like the Punisher was involved, and all the heroes were like, "Oh, this guy's working with us. This guy's like a fucking mass murderer." But the stuff that he did was kind of like, Splinter Cell type activities, where he's like sneaking into, the Baxter Building and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that there's a world in which they could do it, but I think they would have to necessarily tone. You just have to tone it down. There's a guy in a country racked by gun violence. Here is a guy who unapologetically just like guns mafia dudes down in their hundreds, like all the time.
He does love to shoot people. He's definitely in that lone wolf mold. Yeah, I actually just saw that. So John Bernthal is coming back in Daredevil Born Again. So that could be our place where they reimagine him. Because I feel like if you're going to put him back into the MCU, the version they did in the Marvel Netflix show was so dark. You're going to have to put him in a spandex costume and have him with like a paintball gun. Like, you're really going to have to go the other way.
I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it.
But I get why they did it. But it doesn't fit into the Spider-Man of it all.
That said, I think that there is a way, because, again, like Marvel Comics is made up of characters with different tones. Like oftentimes when Frank Castle gets in a room with Spider-Man or whoever, they're just roasting the guy. And I think that there is a world where he becomes...
Oh, that could be fun.
While still a very, very dangerous individual, the butt of a lot of jokes. Like, he's going to be the butt of a lot of jokes.
I think that is a really fun, interesting way to do it, where you kind of make him the butt of the jokes, and you take away the seriousness that he's been afforded by certain groups. Right. I think that could be very good. Okay. Chauncey asks, it's controversial, but I like it. Which was the better series? 90s X-Men animated series or 90s Spider-Man animated series?
I mean, listen, they're both really, really good, but the 90s X-Men was iconic. And part of it is that it had a great theme song. It was taking incredible, already legendary arcs from the X-Men comics and like boiling them down into really, really punchy half-hour animated episodes. And it had so much more interpersonal drama because you have this big team of heroes. It was just better.
No, because we're fair and balanced.
And this is no shots to anybody who likes the animated Spider-Man.
Look, because we're fair and balanced here. I'm going to make the argument for the 90s Spider-Man. I agree with everything you just said. I do believe that the X-Men cartoon is iconic. I love the way that it takes those iconic classic arcs and truncates them and makes them accessible. Yeah. I will say, for me, on a rewatching, I do rewatch the Spider-Man show more, and it is because of that same device that they used. You can watch that Spider-Man show and you can find out the origin of any supervillain. You want to find out what happened to Venom? You can watch that story on there. You want to see this character? You can do it. And in the tradition of Spider-Man as well, there are so many good villains in that show. Like, every out there weird villain is around. So I will say that's the underrated gem. But obviously, X-Men 92, everybody knows it. There's a reason it's getting a sequel. That shit's iconic. But Spider-Man, I'm glad you brought it up, Chauncey, because I don't think it gets the love it deserves.
Should we do a rewatch of the original 90s X-Men animated series?
Oh my God,
preparation
yes.
for the X-Men, upcoming X-Men animated
and
series on Disney Plus?
Let's do Pride of the X-Men 2, you know, the one they made before.
Yeah, that's a great...
Because that's like that shit. I will tell you the real truth. When you watch that, you got to watch it after you watch 92 because 92 doesn't hold up to Pride. Pride is actually you want to see that story. You want to see that story.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so good.
Let's see. Ian asks, is the real hidden theme of our film that actual reality sucks ass because there's no spider person in it? I think that might be.
I think it's it.
I think that in a real, like to make it serious for a second, I think that part of the theme is that our reality actually sucks ass because they're, you know, what are these stories? Generally speaking, they are like incredible wish fulfillment where we want to live in a world in which people with tremendous power and tremendous resources who are geniuses and are rich and are incredibly talented and powerful don't just like sit up in their skyscraper penthouses and like accrue capital and like build bunkers on islands off the coast of New Zealand waiting for the apocalypse. They go out and they try and save the world. We want that to be the case. It's clearly not the case in our world, but we want it to be. That's why these stories have so much staying power. That's why people still engage with them. That's why kids and adults and everybody are in a comic store anytime you walk in there. So yeah, I think that you're right, Ian. In a certain kind of sense, you're correct.
Nothing more to add. That was perfect. I totally agree.
Up next, a return to the Omnibus to discuss Spider-Man 2099. Welcome to another chapter in the Omnibus where lore, analysis, and understanding come together. This week, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Reboots and retcons are, of course, a necessary part of serialized storytelling. That's particularly true in comics, right? Where you're trying to continuously engage a new audience, a new person whose next comic is their first comic. And we've talked a lot about the Marvel's Ultimate Universe in this podcast, to the 2000s era line of books featuring Marvel's most popular heroes in a modern setting. Miles Morales, of course, makes his first appearance in 2011's Ultimate Universe #4. An offshoot of Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Universe has been incredibly influential to all of the MCU properties. Fallout explored the repercussions of the shocking, tragic, and incredibly sorrow-filled death of Peter Parker in the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man. I won't spoil how. And there's a long, long runway to get to that moment, but it's an incredible moment in comic storytelling. And it also acts, Fallout does, as a kind of like soft reboot itself, like a reboot of a retcon, essentially, of the Ultimate Universe. But before Ultimate Marvel, in the 90s, way back in the 90s, there was Marvel 2099. The 2099 initiative, if we can call it that, launched with 4 titles in the year of our Lord, 1992. Ravage 2099. Ravage was a new superhero, and really the marketing behind Ravage was that, hey, Stan Lee's got a new superhero, kids, and it's Ravage. You're going to love it. It's the year's 2099, and here's Ravage. Stan Lee, Excelsior. Do you know anything about Ravage? No, because nobody cares about Ravage anymore. This is also like they tried this in like I want to say 86 with Speedball and a bunch of new heroes too. Stan Lee's back with a new hero. He's Speedball. He bounces around like a speedball. Doom 2099. Victor Von Doom in the year 2099. Punisher 2099, because if there's one thing that's for sure, in now and 100 years in the future, there's going to be dudes killing dudes with guns. And, of course, Spider-Man 2099. Spider-Man 2099 is the only one of those original 4 offerings that has any kind of staying power. It has a real fan base of its own now. The tone, as you can kind of guess just by the selection here, was very, very 90s, the kind of proto-90s to what it became. This is pre all the pockets and all the belts and guns and stuff, but the weird hairstyles were there and the violent grittiness, which had kind of been developing over the course of the mid 80s into the 90s with the offerings of Frank Miller and others was here to see. Now the 2099 line didn't run all that long, like 6 years and change, 7 years ish. But it acted as a launch pad for Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, who, as we have seen from Across the Spider-Verse and in other comics, recent comic offerings, continues to be a character who is engaged with the stuff that's going on in the stories today and is a really fun character to explore. So how did Miguel O'Hara get the spider powers? Well, created by legends Peter David and Rick Leonardi, Miguel's origin is kind of the most original non-clone Spider-Man origin. You know, the rest of them are Miles got his powers in a very similar way to Peter Parker, and the rest of the Spider Society, same thing. They got bit by the radioactive spider. Some of them are just straight off clones of Peter Parker. Not so with Miguel. Miguel is in the year 2099, is a brilliant genetic researcher. Brilliant. And, where do you work if you're a brilliant genetic researcher? You work for the evil corporation Alchemax, because I guess there's no other places that he could have possibly worked. But he decided to work at Alchemax. And his work involved, working on DNA, altering DNA, splicing different DNAs together to create hybrids. One inspiration of Miguel's is a mysterious figure from the heroic age, aka the late 20th century, Spider-Man. Just imagine he's telling his supervisor, Aaron, think of what we could do with the proportional powers of a spider. This guy would be, quote, an ideal corporate raider, meaning like he could climb into our competitors' buildings and steal files and stuff. So maybe Miguel is actually at the right place, the exact right company for him to work at. Miguel is excited about his work, but he's getting a lot of pressure from Aaron, his supervisor, and from CEO Tyler Stone, who really want him to hurry up. We got to start human trials already with this research. And Miguel's like, no, it's too early. We're not ready to do human research. We can't go to human testing yet. And they're like, wrong. I'm the CEO of this company, Tyler Stone. And guess what? I already got a guy. His name is Sims. He is a prisoner. And in exchange for commuting his sentence, which I have somehow bargained for with, I don't know, the Justice Department or somebody, because I'm a fucking billionaire, I've made them agree that they will shorten his sentence if he will undergo your gene splicing process. Miguel is like, fuck, okay, we'll do it. So they put him, in the machinery, and they splice him up, in real time with the genes. And what bursts forth from the mechanized sarcophagus thingy is just like this melted horror. This origin story is clearly influenced by David Cronenberg's The Fly, by Blade Runner, all these kind of dark and mysterious and shadowy and somewhat discomfiting, dystopian futuristic stories, right? And Sims grabs Miguel around the neck after breaking his bonds and bursting out of the machinery. And before he can do too much damage, he just fucking drops dead because the process was extremely just destructive to his body on a cellular level. And Aaron and CEO Stone are like, fuck yeah. That was fucking great. Look at that. He broke out of all that metal and stuff, and he was tied down, and this is awesome. And Miguel's like, what are you talking about? This guy fucking died right away. It's like, yeah, but in the 5 seconds before he died, he was super strong. This is great. Let's keep going. And Miguel is like, no, I quit. He goes to the CEO's office, like, fuck this, I'm out. I can't, we just killed the guy. I can't, this is fucked up. Stone's like, I get it. You have a backbone. You have a moral compass. That's great. Here's a glass of wine. Have this glass of wine. It's not weird at all that we just watched a guy die, and now I'm offering you a glass of, just drink the wine. Miguel's like, all right. And so Miguel drinks the wine and immediately starts tripping balls. And that's because CEO Tyler Stone has slipped Rapture, a instantly addictive hallucinogen, into Miguel's wine. And why? Why would CEO Tyler Stone do this? Here's the reason. Now you're fucking addicted to drugs and you're going to need more. And guess who makes Rapture? Alchemex. We are the only... Why do they make this drug? No one fucking knows. It's like the Sacklers. Only if there was no medical use for this fucking drug. So Alchemex is the only people, the only corporation that makes this incredibly addictive fucking street hallucinogen. And now Miguel is addicted to it. And if you want more, what do you have to do? You have to clock in and come back to work. Keep working, motherfucker. So Miguel goes home tripping, immediately attacks his girlfriend because he's hallucinating. Then it's like it kind of wears off a little bit, and he's like, what am I going to do? He tells his girlfriend everything, and in desperation, he figures, okay, I'm going to sneak back into my lab. I'm going to put myself in the machinery, the other machinery that's not destroyed, right? I'm going to splice my own clean DNA that I have like in a computer bank somewhere into my currently addicted to Rapture DNA, and I'm going to like cleanse myself. I'm going to replace all my DNA and cells with original clean Miguel cells. It's fucking brilliant. He goes in there. He's doing it. Well, guess who's working late tonight? Aaron, the supervisor. Aaron walks in and sees Miguel in the machine and is like, oh, you don't want to fucking push the human trials. You're trying to quit and all this stuff. I'm going to kill you. Now, would Aaron do this if he understood that the CEO himself had just addicted Miguel to drugs in order to keep him working? He probably would not have done this, but he decided he sabotages the machinery and just like, because Miguel had earlier said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we like spliced someone with a spider? Wouldn't that be cool? He is like, watch this. I'm going to splice you with a spider. And he pulls up spider file on the computer. And the machinery goes haywire and fucking explodes. But Miguel is like emerges like shaken, but he comes out of it. And Aaron's like, holy shit, you survived. Not only did he survive, he's got like white eyes. He's super strong. He's got like fucking claws in his hands and his feet. And he's looks like a vampire with fangs and stuff. And he tries to save Aaron's life, who almost like falls out of the building. That goes sideways. Then an Alchemex SWAT team arrives. Miguel is like, this is too crazy. I'm going to end it all. He jumps out of the building. As he's falling to his death, he's like, wait, I don't want to die, actually. And he reaches out and he grabs onto the side of the building. And with his claws, this is how Spider-Man 2099 climbs walls, his talons in his hands and feet just go sink right into the concrete and steel, and he's able to scale the side of the building. Now, superheroes from the heroic age in the 2099 universe had taken on kind of like a cult-like mythology. There were people who were followers of all the Avengers and the Asgardians. A Thorite, who's basically worships Thor as like a cult figure, is flying just random shit that happens in comics, is flying a hang glider across New York City dressed as Thor, doing Thor stuff. When, Miguel comes flying off the side of the building and jumps onto the paraglider and they crash. But the Thorite actually gives Miguel a good bit of advice where he says, listen, Spider-Man, you have to put on a mask. Spider-Man is back. This is so awesome. Spider-Man was an ally of Thor, who I worship as a cult-like figure. And you have to put on a mask now because that's what Spider-Man did. You have to hide your identity. And Miguel's like, that's a good idea. So Stone then gets wind of Miguel's transformation. He hires like this cyborg to hunt him down. By that time, Miguel has obtained a costume, the costume that we see in the movie, that kind of very, very 90s, slightly techno, kind of grungy, webbed under the arms costume. And this, you would think, did Miguel make this out of unstable molecules? He does talk about, I need unstable molecules now with my claws and stuff. No, this is a Day of the Dead costume that he had just like in his closet somewhere. I guess they do Day of the Dead differently in 2099. And From there, Miguel, of course, defeats the cyborg with the help of the Asgardian cult followers, including the original Thorite, and the legend of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, is born. He is a spider, but a lot of the weird parts of his power set, the fangs, the claws, etc., probably come from the interaction of the spider DNA plus the crazy rapture drug that was like circling around in his bloodstream. That, folks, is Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Up next, Hive Mind with Spider-Man India writer Nikesh Shukla.
Welcome to Hive Mind, where we explore a topic in more detail with an expert guest. This episode, we're thrilled to welcome Nikesh Shukla, the writer of the brand new Spider-Man India series from Marvel Comics, and my friend.
Nikesh, thank you for joining us for Vision.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
Yes.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi. So happy that you're here, my friend.
I'm very
Before we get into the Spider-Man of it all, how do you all know each other?
there was a crop. There was like a moment in the London poetry scene where you'd go to gigs and you'd have me and Rosie and amazing people like Musa Okwonga and Shaman Suleiman. But you'd also have Ed Sheeran and Sabrina Mahfouz and Riz Ahmed.
Yeah. And
there were other people who ended up being massive as well. Warsan, I think, was around at the time as well. So we just became firm friends, being the only two people who liked comic books.
Basically.
And meant it. Because we actually went to the comic book shop and bought comic books.
And now we're here. What a journey.
Have you seen Spider-Verse?
I have.
Your thoughts on Spider-Man India?
Well, look, my global thoughts on Spider-Verse is going into the Spider-Verse is a top 10 movie for me of all time.
Absolutely.
No question.
And so you're already going in going, the bar is very, very high. And I fucking loved it.
It's
absolutely loved it. 2 hours, 20 minutes went by very quickly. I even sat through the credits when they flipped from the good credits to the weird, the screen is slightly broken and you've got that purple hue credits. I just thought it was brilliant. Spider-Man India was a lot of fun. Spider-Punk was awesome. When Daniel Kaluuya shouted "Man like Miles," I wanted to jump up in my seat and go, "Yes, bruv!"
I screamed. It was so perfect. Before we get to you writing Spider-Man India and stuff, what's your origin story with comics? Like with Spider-Man in particular and comics, which I know for you is like really intertwined.
Yeah, so when I was 6 years old, I went to India for an extended period of time, and my cousins, who are all a lot older than me, they were all reading Archie comics, and they all felt that a 6-year-old probably didn't need to learn about jalopies and double dates and all the rest of it. Probably too young to understand, weird innuendos about making out and stuff. But so they bought me a Spider-Man comic and a Batman comic, and that Spider-Man comic was just the one that I reread for the entire time I was there. I just absolutely fell in love with that comic. So weirdly, my comics journey started in India, and then in the mid-90s, me and my best friend Junaid, who we used to go to the comic shop every week, and we would sit at the back of the comic shop and read all of the comics for free. And then whatever little money we had, we would buy all those number ones, all those, it was the mid-90s, so all those foil variant covers.
Yeah.
And we were like, this is it. This is how we're going to make our fortune. yeah, exactly. This is how we'll make our fortune. And we never did. And then years later, when I thought I was the only person left in my friendship group reading comic books, I started going to Orbital Comics in London, which Rosie was later worked out when they moved locations.
I did.
But when it was in the original top of Tottenham Court Road location.
Basement.
Yeah, in the basement. It was me and Inwa Ellams, the poet. We used to sit in there and read comics at the back because it turns out 20 years after the fact, I was still a cheapskate.
thinking of those foil variant years and the collectible comic and the bag. How did you ever come up with, because this was my problem, did you ever come up with a solution to getting the comic home without bending the pages? This was the issue I had coming from the shop with the super collectible comic. I thought that I had saved all my money for. It's in the bag. It's got the little extra sheet. It's got the little sticker pack. It's got the foil thing. But how do you get it home on a bicycle in a backpack without bending the corners? How do you do it? How did you do it?
Jason, please don't make me tell this story because I'm going to lose so many.
Oh my gosh, please tell us. Now you have to tell us.
We had a briefcase.
That's cool.
That's a good idea.
That's like you're in Pulp Fiction, like the gold is glowing when you put the hologram covers in there.
No, you're putting 2023 nostalgia onto the 80s briefcase that I was still using in the early 90s. In the early 90s, that made me a prick. And in the mid 90s, when all this was happening, it made me somewhat of an oddball. But me and Junaid, we'd have the briefcase. It had all of the comics in the main cabin. I don't know what the main compartment.
The first class comic book cabin in the suitcase.
And because we were teenage boys, you lifted up the cabin compartment for the secret cabin compartment, and there was some naughty magazines.
That was the most important briefcase in the world.
Exactly. Like, I don't think my dad is going to listen to this podcast. Sorry, guys. I don't think he listens to X-Ray Vision.
It's all right.
So I feel like I can get away with confessing that.
Wow. Who could have ever known that it would have been such a good, unique story? Okay, so sticking to that 90s kind of like, because we don't really get to talk about these crazy speculation boom times. Do you remember like this single comic that you bought where you were like, this is the one? Like, I remember getting Spawn #1. Like, when I got a copy of that, I was like, I'm going to be rich. I didn't know they printed like 5 million copies of it.
It was a comic called Legionnaires.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it lasted more than 10 issues. And then we upsold that so we could buy Prophet issue 4, which had the misprint in it.
Oh.
And that was the one where we were like, this is the one, guys. This is the one. But we lived in a pre-eBay world. What we were going to do. Just, there was an end to that story. I don't know why I stopped telling it. I was going to say the end of that story, and then I was like, dude, you already told them about the briefcase.
You were like, the briefcase has already come up, guys.
Don't tell them that you kept meaning to go to the various cons and sell Prophet issue 4, but you couldn't afford the train fare.
That's relatable.
It is relatable. It's much like Spider-Man. He was always broke.
Mm-hmm. I never even went to a proper comic book convention till I moved to America. Like, they have an English comic convention, MCM, but I went there like once or twice, and it was mostly just like because I could get there on the tube.
The ones we went to, it was basically a bunch of people like us trying to sell things, trying to buy their house, and no one buying, because we just didn't realize that all of those comics were in abundance at the time.
Yeah.
So how did you find yourself writing Spider-Man?
Because of the wonderful Jamie McKelvey, basically. I've on Twitter for years, I would just try and manifest that I wanted to write a Spider-Man, because like I've had a long and varied career writing novels, working on TV shows and stuff, and I feel like I've done everything that I wanted to do. And then a couple of years ago, I turned down a major award in the UK called an MBE, because it stands for Member of the British Empire. And I was like, I don't really want those letters after my name. And so when I did that, I kind of felt like maybe I should try and do something for myself. So one day I just wrote on Twitter, one day I want to write a Spider-Man comic, because I still filed it as, you know, when you're a kid and you're like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a traffic warden, I want to be an astronaut, I want to write comic books. It still felt like one of those careers. And Jamie McKelvey, who followed I think he still follows me. Yeah, he follows me on Twitter. What a way to find out. Yeah, Jamie just DM'd me and said, do you want me to introduce you to some people at Marvel if you're serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm serious, sure. In that way that like someone has just gone, oh, you know that pipe dream you have? I can definitely make it a reality if you want. And then you suddenly freak out because you're like, oh God, I've actually got to try and do this properly. So Jamie put me in touch with the people at Marvel. It was the pandemic times, so you know, they were busy trying to get comic books out, and they had me. I was one of probably many people going, hey, can I write a Spider-Man comic? And I was starting to feel like maybe I should just pitch them something properly rather than just going, hey, can we have a chat and we can fling some ideas around. Let me just go in with a pitch. And around the time I had that realization, that first teaser trailer for Across the Spider-Verse came out, and I was talking to Rosie about it. I think you guys even discussed it on the podcast at the time. But there's a moment where it kind of, you hear a tabla on it, and I thought, oh, I wonder if Pavitra Prabhakar is going to be in this. That would be pretty cool. And then I thought, why has there not been another miniseries since the original one that came out in 2005? He's such a fun character, and actually, whenever he's cropped up in all the Spider-Versal adventures, he's always sort of in the background. He gets a cool action shot, maybe a couple of quips, but we don't really actually know much about him. They haven't explored enough about him. Fuck it, I'm going to pitch Spider-Man India. So I wrote them an idea, sent it through, and they came back and said, you know what, funnily enough, we were thinking about doing another miniseries, and I don't know if you know this, but he's going to be in the next in Across the Spider-Verse. And so that's pretty much how it happened. I got to write a new Spider-Man, and I got to like put my own stamp on it, which was the fun thing, because there wasn't much about Pavitra that was sort of canon, and I hadn't seen the movie, I hadn't read the script or anything, so I got to just do what I wanted to do, which was great.
So, like, for people who haven't read that 2005 miniseries, which I'm sure has been reprinted and is probably available to buy, seeing as the movie is out. Who is Pav? Like, what's the story of Spider-Man India?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Rosie. I'm sure you will. He was one of the first sort of multiversal spiders to exist. I mean, it wasn't sort of clarified until later on that he was what Earth he was in.
Yeah.
But that first 4-issue arc is very much like a retelling of the Spider-Man origin story with the death of Uncle Bim in this case, and the introduction of like an Indian demon who is the Green Goblin, and a Dr. Octopus type villain. And it's pretty much an origin story, and that's pretty much it. And it's fun and it's interesting, like recontextualizing Spider-Man and that iconic sort of New York skyline to somewhere like Bombay, which is, you know, the skyline was very different in 2005, and in 2023 it's even more different because, you know, there are so many more high rises now than there were back then, and you know they were springing up then. So that was pretty much it. It was very much like a retelling of the origin story, and sort of remixing it with sort of Indian mysticism and bits of Hinduism, and just imbuing it with, like, Spider-Man isn't bitten by a radioactive spider. He's sort of chosen and given this sort of mystical power.
I was reading through a bunch of your interviews, and there's a quote in one of them that jumped out at me. Where you said, telling, I think, the story that you told us about your kind of Spider-Man origins, your comics origin story, that reading Spider-Man made you feel less alone. Could you explain that?
Yeah, like, the character of Peter Parker and to an extent Miles Morales, they're both such brilliant teenagers. They've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. They've got everything against them. They are so racked with guilt and shame, which, as the child of immigrant parents, I grew up racked with guilt and shame all the time. And so whenever I read those comics, I just felt like this superhero kid got me, because he put on a mask to become his best, to become his cocky, most powerful best. And when And so there was always this interesting thing of like, who is the real person, the Spider-Man or Peter Parker? You know, that whole thing that's explored in issue 31, the sort of the duality of the selves, and it just really resonated with me. I think it's really hard to nail writing teenagers who feel like the world is against them, but also make them fun. You know, that's the thing about Spider-Man. He's a fun character. Their arcs, even when they get dark, even when they get heavy, they're still fun. There's still a lightness to them that you don't often get, or that the balance is always off in other books, I think.
Yeah, and like, what's it like for you then to come from loving Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and that being such an influential kind of story in your life, to then getting to reintroduce readers to Pav and to this, like you said, a story that hasn't been seen for almost 20 years, and to just get to kind of go wild and put your own stamp on it? I'm
not gonna lie, the expectation of it was terrifying. Like, not
I feel you.
Not just of like anyone else reading it, but like, I'm still a reader. I'm still a comic book reader. Yeah. So like, it had to be something that I would read first and foremost. And one of the things that I really loved about the end beats of No Way Home was I know there isn't another Tom Holland Spider-Man on the books as far as we know. I'm sure there will be at some point, but what really excites me about that is we get a street level Spidey back, and the first half of Homecoming, when he is street level Spidey, that is my favorite Spider-Man. I love writing that Spider-Man, and so that's what I decided to do with Pav. I just wanted to root him in his city and sort of make that background, that new setting, just really feel like it's a character as much as he is. And what was really fun was I got to write a small introductory, like, cold open adventure with Peter Parker and Miles Morales, which sort of sets up the book, which is like absolute dream come true. And then you just root him back in Earth 50101 in that Bombay, where he is the only Spider-Man. So Spider-Man India is kind of a weird title. Well, if we get, I mean, if I did a short backup story in Edge of Spider-Verse last year called Average Reluctant Teenage Superhero, where he basically sort of questions the concept of him being called Spider-Man India. If he's like,
it's very good. Go and read it.
And so if we get, if this comic book does well, hopefully I'll get to bring him back, or someone else will get to bring him back, and we can kind of have that conversation about, him being not an Indian Spider-Man, but being the Spider-Man of Earth 50101. But yeah, writing a street level Spidey, understand, like, so I actually, look, I'm going to confess something here. When I was workshopping the idea of what my Spider-Man story was going to be, I workshopped it with a certain Rosie Knight, who was very helpful. Who was very, very helpful, had loads of thoughts. Her and Nick Marino really helped me out with some thoughts, and just sort of helped me frame what I wanted to do, because my thing was I want him to be on the ground, I want him to be doing community-based stuff, and that whole thing of like, with great power comes great responsibility is wonderful. It's like, it's obviously set the tone for all of Spider-Man canon, but the thing that it has the potential to be is feel quite individualistic. And so when you have a hero who stands up for a community, a street level hero who stands up for a community, you kind of have to talk about what that community means to him and what he means to that community. And so I thought about the idea of this thing called seva, which is like this Hindu thing of like selfless community service, which to me, like, when one has great power and great responsibility, one decides to be a vigilante mass superhero, they might do selfless community service. And so the book's called Seva, and it's basically about, it's that classic, why am I doing this storyline, but with some cool fights and stuff.
I wanted to go back to something you were talking about. You've written in a lot of different kinds of mediums. You've done journalism, you've written novels, you've written criticisms, you've written comic books. how do you, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to this that either want to create something or want to write something, want to, in some fashion, put something in the world that is going to require them asking someone to let them do it. What is your process for pitching something? Like, you got to pitch Marvel Comics. How do you go about it? What do you do?
You just gotta have some famous friends, Jason.
Right, but before that...
the terrible truth.
The terrible truth.
I honestly think
that really does help. Let's admit it.
Yeah. It does help.
It does help. I do honestly think that when people pitch, they often pitch the wrong way round. They pitch what they think the magazine or the publisher or the comic book editor wants, or what they think that the audience wants, rather than the story that they want to tell. I guess the sort of the very earnest way to say this is, you could write anything. We're all in the imagination business. Like, we can make anything happen. We can make a meteorite crash towards Earth, and the only people who can save humanity are a ragtag group of industrial drillers, or we can have a boy and a girl falling in and out of love over 3 years at a prestigious Dublin college, or we can have humanity try and put itself back together by watching a Shakespeare play following a global pandemic. I don't know, we can do absolutely anything. So the thing that you kind of have to do when you're pitching is go, what is my unique take on this world? What is the one thing that I want to say? What is, because your ideas, your unique perspective, the perspective that you have, that's your currency ultimately. You can, those editors at Marvel have seen every single person try and imitate Stan Lee. They've seen everyone try and imitate Todd McFarlane. They've seen everyone try and imitate all of the greats. They've seen all of that. So what do you want to say? And that, so when I was workshopping what I wanted to do with Rosie and a bunch of other friends, like, the thing that I kept coming back to was, what's the story I want to tell? I want to tell a street level Spidey story. I want to tell a story that's about the pull between hustler culture, individualism, and standing up for your community. I want to tell a story that's about gentrification. I want to tell a story about Andrew Tate. That got softened a little in the editorial process, because it turns out I was trying to say a lot in 5 issues, and we can come back to that. So yeah, I guess that's my best advice. Before you go out and get yourself a famous friend, work out what you want to say first.
And when it came to writing this comic, was there something process-wise that surprised you? Because you've read comics your whole life, but when you read a book and when you write a book, the thing that you write, your manuscript, looks a lot like the published book. When you write a TV show, that is different, but you hear the words that you write on the page and you see the people doing the things you describe. When you write a script for a comic book, it essentially transforms completely when the artist gets their hands on it. So what was the process like of kind of getting comfortable with writing comics?
Writing comics and working on TV shows are so collaborative. And when you've spent so long being the sole auteur writer, writing the literary greats all by yourself, it becomes quite hard to work out at what, the sort of the pie chart of collaboration. So working with Abhishek Malsuni on this, who was the artist, and working with the letterers and the inkers and the colorizers, you can tell I've got the technical terms down.
Everyone's favorite colorizers.
We've got the colorizers. It was really interesting because there's a lot of collaboration going on, between me and Abhishek and the editors, and the way that the letterer might put everything in might make you then review whether the panel just says it, or whether you need the dialogue, whether there's dialogue missing, whether dialogue just sort of is saying what's already happening in the panel. And the whole thing is very iterative, and it's very flexible, and it's very, very emergent, and I really love that. Today I've been working on the script for issue 3, which I turned in back in September, but now that all the artwork's done and it's been inked, there's new stuff that I'm finding. and there's new stuff that I'm able to kind of push on. And actually, having written the script for issue 5 like a couple of weeks ago, I now know where this is heading, so I can, this is the midpoint issue. Mm-hmm. So it is very iterative. But what I'm hoping to do when that first issue drops is go back to the first script that I wrote, the first draft of it. And because I started writing the script, not realizing that it would be helpful for me to draw out some pages with some stick figures and all the rest of it, and then write the script to that, and then hand that script in to the artist, and then talk with the artist about what I was hoping for, and then give them like a visual palette from which to pull from and all the rest of it. Like I hope I can show that journey, because that journey was really fun for me. Like I've never worked like that before.
What did you think of Spider-Man's costume in Across the Spider-Verse?
I thought it was great. When it first came out, it looks very specifically like there's a Bollywood actor called Mithun Chakrabarti who in the 80s or 90s there was a very famous film called Disco Dancer.
Oh, I love that movie.
I am a disco dancer.
It's actually on Netflix. That's how I discovered it. It's great.
And MIA's song Jimmy samples one of the songs in that. I thought the look was very sort of inspired by that era of Bollywood. And it's obviously so different from what I was working with. And so it's interesting now sort of seeing what they've done with Pav, and also listening to Kemp on the pod last week talk about how this is the film is basically a warning shot across the bows of canon, so what I was watching it going, oh god, do I have to go back to the drawing board? But actually, like my Pav and the Pav that's in the film, they're the same. They come from the same essence, but they are different characters. I don't want to ruin it too much, but there might be a meeting of minds when it comes to that outfit at some point in this.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't want to spoil it too much. I hope my editors at Marvel don't mind me saying that.
I think that's a wonderful tease that a lot of people have been wondering about since the film.
An absolutely great tease. And for me, Pav's costume in the film is a revelation, because my personal theory up until that point was that open top masks don't work. I've never seen it work before this. I don't like when the hair comes out the top. I've never, whether it's, Hank Pym as Goliath, you could go on and on. The number of times people have tried Hawkeye, like I've never seen it work until Pav in Across the Spider-Verse is the first time I was like, that works. That looks good.
It's because it's Bollywood hair.
Yeah.
Bollywood.
Dream hair.
It's almost like, Bollywood is famed for loads of slow motion shots of like people whipping their hair across their perfectly chiseled faces, and it just made me think when I was watching it. I wonder if they like slowed the frame rate of like the way his hair moves and then put it back up to normal speed, like almost like time stretching his hair, because it looks amazing.
I would believe it, because I did learn this week, thanks to all the other Hobie Brown fans out there, that they animated Hobie his body was animated on the 3s, but his outlines were always animated on the 2s. And they had to create an entirely new animation device to do that.
Crazy.
So I think that you're right about the hair. I could absolutely see that. Also, I loved the way that Pav got to be. He's like the carefree, non-depressed, charming, everything goes right Spider-Man. That feels very different than anything we've seen of any Spider-Man. So did you like that kind of reinterpretation?
Yeah, I loved it. I'm really glad that he got to be happy-go-lucky and just seemed like he was having a whale of a time, because obviously a lot of the Spider Society is having a miserable time. I've had loads of messages from people in recent weeks. They know I'm writing a Spider-Man Indian comic book, but I think they sometimes don't know the difference between a comic book and an animated film, because there's a couple of this isn't a spoiler, but there's a couple of lines in it where he talks about chai tea means tea, and naan bread means bread and stuff. And I wrote an essay in a book that sort of blew up in a big way called The Good Immigrant, which sort of pokes fun at all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, it's not like it's an original thought, like loads of people have said it. Loads of people have said it over the years, but it's such a well-worn diaspora complaint that obviously it would show up in a Spider-Man. But like, I've had loads of people go, "I love those lines you wrote for that Spider-Man." I was like, no, that's not. Sadly, that's not me.
You're like, maybe the next movie, maybe and beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, well, where can people find you? Where can people find your stuff? Are you posting out there? Where on the internet can people find your material?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said on the internet, because I was going to say, if you want to find me at my house, please don't.
Yeah.
I'm a very private person, guys. Yeah, I'm at Nikesh Shukla writer on Instagram. I'm at Nikesh Shukla on Twitter. If that's still a thing by the time
this appears to be still a thing today. Who knows tomorrow or in the future?
Yeah. And yeah, Spider-Man India issue 1 is out 14th of June. And I've just, I hope you don't mind me plugging, I've just had a new YA book come out called Stand Up, which is a fun little story about how about a young kid who wants to be a stand-up comedian, and also how you should never meet your heroes because they are always disappointing.
Important life lessons.
Important life lessons to bum out all of the teenagers who now are going to listen to this and go, I need a famous friend. And I've written a book basically mitigating that, going, don't find a famous friend.
It would be terrible to have a famous friend.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, add Spider-Man India to your pull list. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll just get a main title, Spider-Man, and it'll be about Pav. We can dream.
Yeah, Paviter Prabhakar's Spider-Man. That's what I want to go for. I think that'd be like Miles Morales.
That's
Spider-Man
really
now.
cool.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've always loved your work, Jason and Rosie. You are one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Oh. Thank you so much. So happy you could be here. And so excited for everyone to read this book. Also, the Edge of the Spider-Verse story is like illustrated by Non-Stop Bangers. It was Nikesh's first ever comic. So go out and find a copy. Nikesh's first ever comic. And it was like some of the artists who worked on his stories, like Mark Bagley, Adam Kubert, like only the most famous Spider-Man artists of all time on his first ever comic.
I mean, Adam Kubert has done all of my covers. It's so absolutely crazy.
That's so insane.
I cannot believe it. So please buy the book. This has been so much fun. I want to do more. And also, I'm just going to manifest this now. I really want to write a Daredevil.
Love it. That's the next one.
Yeah.
I love Daredevil. I feel like Daredevil is consistently brilliant.
Yes, I that is the correct opinion. It has for 40-ish years been mostly very, very, very good.
Maybe this is going to be outrageous. Okay, let's take X-Men out of the equation. But maybe the book, without X-Men, maybe the single superhero who has the most like iconic runs that you can just bring up.
Oh,
because you have like Born Again, you have the Charles Soule run, Zdarsky just did a run that's already been seen as like a modern classic. You got the Bendis run. You got so many different people who've taken on that character, and each of those trades, people will be buying them for like a really long time. I've got them all.
I've got like 6 omnibuses bending the shelf on my my bookshelf. I think it's for this reason. Now that we've been derailed, I'll say this is my theory, and you tell me whether you agree or disagree. It's one, Daredevil has been mostly held aside from big events. He's in his own little world running street level. He doesn't have to punch Thanos or anything. You know, it's not fucking around with the Beyonder when, you know, world dimensional interactions happen. He's really not involved in that. He's just like, hey, I'm keeping the streets of Hell's Kitchen clean. That's it. And then 2, that's the place where they put like the up and coming really, really good comics writer often. They'll put them there and say, okay, let's see what you got. And then they just turn out to always deliver.
Oh, sounds like that would be a good place for you. I think you're right, Jason. Up and coming new comic writer who needs to show that he can deliver. It's time.
Can he do it?
Nikesh Daredevil.
He's written.
I've got my pen ready.
He's written several well-regarded novels. He's already writing comics, but can he do it this time? Can he do it again?
Can he?
Should he?
He's turned down an MBE.
Just,
who is this guy?
Who is it? To be continued.
Just because you said you could write Daredevil, Nikesh, doesn't mean you should. It's the ultimate lesson. Look, call me Marvel. You know where I live. Actually, Marvel, you can come over to my house.
Marvel's the only people who are allowed to just turn up.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Nikesh.
Thanks so much for having me.
Big thank you to Nikesh, and that's it for us. Rosie, any plugs?
Yes, you can find me as always, Rosie Marks, on Instagram and Letterboxd. I'm here twice a week, and on Saturday, 10th of June, I will be at Universal City Walk doing a signing for my Godzilla comic with Nick Marino, and we will be at T4, which is Things from Another World, a really fun comic shop owned by Dark Horse Comics. So if you're in the Valley, if you've never come down to the South Bay for any of our signings, you can find us there. Also, if you're in the SGV, you can go to Nostalgic Comics. We did a really fun Spider-Verse inspired art exhibition, and I did a big piece of Hobie Brown fan art. So Spider-Punk forever.
X-Ray Vision is taking a week off for a mini summer vacation. There'll be no episodes next week on either June 14th or 16th. We'll be back rested and ready with more deep dives and theories on June 21st.
Subscribe on YouTube so you can keep up with us while you miss us while we're on vacation. You can watch full episodes of the show there. And if you check out our Discord, you can hang out with loads of cool fans who love all the same stuff as you, same stuff as us, and we're there sometimes too.
5-star ratings, 5-star reviews. We need them. We got to have them. You got to give them to us. Here's one from Norojo44 or Noroho44. Best pod out there. This pod, which has allowed me to fully embrace my inner nerd, has become my favorite to listen to by far.
Thank you.
Jason and Rosie seem like genuinely great people. Thank you. And they cover all the movies and shows I watch, providing great fan-level deep dives. They've also helped me rediscover my love of comics and graphic novels. I appreciate their suggestions for additional reading, viewing, and listening. Mostly, I love that they're fans who just want to have fun with the content they cover instead of looking for reasons to criticize everything. Thank you so much, Noroho44.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.